right, we are live, episode 26. This is going to be part two of with Chad Markley. Chad, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
We are real excited. We got cut off last week. Just sometimes when you go live, there's some technical difficulties. So thanks everybody for tuning back in. We were just getting into some good stuff. To recap last week, if you didn't get to see last week, we were covering how Chad Markley became a legend. Okay, and he's a four-time Blizzard Bash winner, and he just came off at the fourth victory there with the team, and it's extremely impressive. You've got quite the resume, and I was getting into paying it forward and some different things that you're doing, Chad, which is through the podcasting. Getting on this podcast. You're doing some venturing into Ohio, coming up that I want to get into a little bit, and just everything that you're evolving with, I guess, within the sport. Let's get into that.
Sure. Also as well as a driver, I'm a promoter too, and I see a great need to secure where we came from with a bone stock type class that everybody can afford and enjoy, and not be quite so mad when they lose and they just broke $20,000 worth of stuff and didn't make any money. So that's important to the local level, especially to keep the sport going and to keep people being able to afford it, where it's a hobby, not a semi-professional deal.
So you started your own promotion, correct? Like Championship Demolition Derby Association? Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So you started your own promotion. You started it to keep that, to make sure that we didn't get too far disconnected from the stock stuff, or?
Not exactly. I started it because I got tired of bad promoters, to be honest. Everybody makes bad calls. No promoter's perfect. But at the local level, it was hard for me to go run anywhere because we could beat most anybody on the track, but you couldn't beat the promoter at the end of the day. So I kind of got fed up with that and said I would be the guy that wouldn't do that.
And a testament to that is paying it forward. I always say paying it forward. That's kind of, hey, look, if you want change, then be the change, right? And you were certainly that if you're starting your own promotion. The bad promoting thing. Let's get into that. What is bad promoting?
I wouldn't say bad promoting, just unprofessional on, just not even the calls. I mean, on inspection and safety, things like that concern me, where they would just be concerned about the guys that had the chance to win. They didn't check the guys for safety that didn't have the chance, and things like that. I think it's everywhere. It's not just isolated to my circumstances, for sure. So I think a lot of the top drivers have went through things like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain cliches in the world, and then obviously in Derby, and hey, the bad promoting, the cheated cars, the lack of inspection, the hey, this is a buddy system. I mean, the cliches exist for a reason, and it's because they happen. I mean, I can name a number of shows where it's, backyard, knock the windows out type deal, where you roll in or something and a promoter say, look, you're not winning tonight. And I'm sure you've been to these shows. How can you say that? What that is the biggest thing that frustrates me. How can you tell me if I show up to a show, I'm not winning tonight?
Well, they've never told me that. They just proved it later on. So
and they proved it. Yeah, they proved it by throwing you out or giving you a short clock, or those are things that frustrate me too. I mean, I've been in drivers' meetings where they've said, hey, look, by the way, the rules that you came and you signed up for, the rules have now just changed, and you don't get 60 seconds to hit anymore, this and that. Like, well, what? You can't just change the rules on the fly. 60 seconds is 60 seconds.
Right. There's just so many ways to go about that and talk about that. And it was main. I mean, I didn't get into promotion because of and that was local level stuff, not national. It was and safety for just all kinds of reasons. But that was back. I had a head start in promoting because my sister and her husband have GSA and they've been in business for 40 years, and then I'd go out to Illinois and Indiana. And we did the Indiana State Fair for a few years, Illinois State Fair, the Missouri State Fair with them. So I had a pretty good head start on knowing what to do and then to keep long-term goals in mind and then try to keep things cleaned up by working with them. So I kind of had a head start, and then they were booked too full. So I started picking up a few of my own shows around, and next thing you know, it grew into a full-time, part-time job with, up to 15 shows in multiple states.
So you do a roughly 15?
Yeah. Yeah.
And where are you? I mean, obviously you're from Kansas.
But majority in Kansas. We picked up the Bud Blowout in Bowling Green, Missouri 2 years ago. I've got a show in Perryton, Texas. That's a really good show. They're kind of down there in the corner by themselves, and we cleaned up a big mess there for them. And then the rest of them are here. I did a show in York, Nebraska, the King of the Ring, when it was freshly up there in Nebraska before we brought it down to Lynn, Kansas. And the rest of them are pretty much in Kansas.
We can go down a bunch of rabbit holes, but one thing I wanted to touch base on is, what do you guys do for sandbagging?
Something we started about 2 years ago. Sandbagging, team driving, we'll all do it if we're allowed to. I'm guilty of it. But we bring the old cordless impact, and if we flag it and we don't talk to you, we just come out and pull a lug nut off your wheel. Puts it back in your hands. Worst thing you can ever do is break a flag, in my opinion. I've seen it justified. I've seen it unjustified. And no matter what, somebody's mad. Well, at least you got the opportunity to know that I'm serious and to pick up the throttle or go find somebody else to play with on the track.
I heard about this maybe about a year ago, and I think I heard it from Robbie. I think Robbie went out to Kansas and somebody brought it back to me, and they talked about it. And this is such an interesting concept because obviously things have been tried. The balloons, the pink, everything's been tried. But if you start taking lug nuts away, I mean, things can become serious real quick. I mean, I think there's the times you guys have taken 2. You just tell them, hey, we're taking 2 tonight right away.
Yeah, if the heats look bad or if it looks real groupy, in my opinion, I'll just flat tell them, hey, tonight it's 2, so it's your choice.
So, have you had any? I mean, did tires fall off?
I've had one group that didn't believe me, and they lost the front wheel.
They lost the front
down to 1.
Yeah. Well, that's actually, I mean, not just interesting. That's pretty innovative, really, to think that far ahead and say, look, we'll just take lug nuts. And
you've seen it all. I mean, nothing works. I mean, and no disrespect to the officials or to drivers, but we all do. The winners go to win, and we do absolutely everything we can do to stay below the radar to win. So there's some disconnect, right? Like, we are there to provide entertainment, but then also there's this big carrot out there. Obviously, we'll get into this. You come into Ohio for the big money here, but there's this big carrot out there that, you want to win. So how do we mend that bridge a little bit with drivers and then obviously the entertainment aspect that we have to get fans in the stands? Well, that's what I caution a lot of my fairs with. I mean, it's a tricky, slippery slope when we put too much money out there in front of people. Then it starts slowing the pace of the show down unless the promoter themselves are going to take control of it and keep people moving at a fair, equal playing field that you need to invite everybody of that level. So, it's all on the promoter, however they want to handle it. The drivers are going to do whatever you let them get away with.
Yeah, it's the drive. I agree with you. It's the drivers'
But
job.
the driver, when the money gets big, the drivers aren't there to entertain the crowd anymore. The crowd does not matter to that driver.
But we still, because like for me, I want to reward you guys, right?
I know. Yep.
With that big money. But then also we have to have people come back. We have to have people entertained, and we're doing some things. And the reason why you're coming to Ohio to keep that entertainment, in that competition at the highest level. But you want to pay the guys, you want to reward them, but then you got to have fans that are going to leave there and they're going to feel like they got a show, and they didn't have to sit in there in the crowd for 12 hours to get a show. And they were entertained. They're going to come back.
Yes. Yeah. And you don't want to punish, because no matter what driver you punish, they're going to name 3 other drivers that you should have broke their stick or something. I mean, it's a very tough deal.
You mentioned not being a fan of breaking sticks. I'm not either. I'm not a fan of breaking sticks. I think that you should have things put in place in order to avoid that at all costs. I think there's just too much money, too much time invested to go down that route. Why are we still stuck there? Can we get out of that, or is the breaking sticks thing always going to be a solution to solve this?
I don't believe so. That's why I've came up with something different than breaking sticks. But that's just my way of doing it, and I don't do a lot of things the way other people do. I mean, so that's my solution, and hopefully somebody has one better than that, and hopefully it works, because I've just seen it. There's too many things go bad, or too many. You run 3-4 guys off because you broke their stick, and they watch the video and say, "Well, what about Jim over there? He wasn't doing nothing for a hell of a lot longer than me. Why'd he not get broke off?" So, it's not a good deal.
Well, your solution is as good as I've heard, because breaking a stick to me is like a total slap in the face to a driver. It would be like, drivers are customers of promoters. And when you go out there and you do that, you're not seeing them again. I mean, when you break someone's stick, I rarely think that they're going to just come to terms with it later on and say, you know what, it was justified, because they're always going to come out there, or they're always going to watch the tape and they're going to say 5 other guys are doing the same thing.
Exactly. Whether they're right or wrong. I mean, you're exactly right.
Getting into a little bit different side of things is the podcasting side. I know, Chad, you're an old school driver, a legend in the sport, but you are dabbling in pushing our sport forward, whether it's those ideas, but also the podcasting, putting yourself out here for people to get to know who Chad Markley is, doing these types of things. Has anyone held you back? Have you had any reservation doing this stuff? Walk me through that.
Not, wasn't a big fan of doing the Facebook Live stuff and things. And then after we pushed it out a little bit, no matter how much you put down on paper, no matter how many phone calls you answer, not everybody hears the exact way you said it, or what you're really looking for. It really put a big curve in phone calls and in what our beliefs are as inspectors, on what we're going to allow per the printed rule, or per the gray area, or whatever. What's the fine line? I mean, it changed a lot of things and made our life as inspectors a little bit easier, because it gives them a chance to ask questions in front of their peers, and everybody gets the same answer that way. So a little bit reserved about doing it. I've loosened up quite a bit. It doesn't bother me to get on here and do it as much as it did at the beginning. I think it's been very good for our side of the promotion of Demolition Derby, and the younger drivers, and the drivers that want to ask questions they know the answer to. but they don't want to hear the answer to.
Well, I'll go one further. I think it's obviously benefiting your promotion and to get that out to the drivers and do that. I do the same stuff, but Chad, I think this means a lot for the sport. Paying it forward for the sport. A lot of people. This is a day and age where people are still hesitant to show anything in the garage. They're still hesitant to talk about anything. But we have these huge platforms of social media that we can use for the good, not just the bad. I know there's some negativity that comes with it, but we can use those as platforms to get our sport out to the masses. And doing things like this is awesome, man.
Most of the keyboard jockeys that type any of the crap that's negative don't even run the classes they want to bitch about. So they're at least of any of our worries.
Yeah, they're just finger tapping that keyboard always.
Yeah, they'll never show up to the show they ask questions about.
Nope. Well, yeah. Well, I just wanted to, hey, I appreciate those things, and I appreciate you coming on here and doing this and progressing the sport, man. We talked about prior to getting on here live. We talked about an organization and what that could possibly look like. You had some reservations if it could ever happen. Can it happen? Tell us.
I don't think so. It's going to have to take a big push at the top, and it's going to have to trickle down to get any type of unified rules or anything like that. Everybody's got their own theories. Everybody's got their own pet peeves. Different insurance companies, as we mentioned earlier. That's all got to line up. All them stars have to line up for this to happen.
My fingers are crossed. I'm holding out. I think, gosh, I hope that it can happen for the betterment of the sport. I hope that it can happen. A lot of stuff has to change. I think for new things to come, things have to die and we have to change our ways a little bit. But I think, gosh, I'm holding out hope that it can happen.
Well, I hope so. But I mean, the big thing is, if we can just start with something little on safety or on let's just say age limits or something like that, because at the end of the day, it's everybody in the Derby world's insurance that's getting affected when something finally does happen, and we got to be cautious of that.
Yeah, and it's not a matter of if; it's a matter of when. I mean, we're crashing cars together.
And it's not the 90s when everybody had somewhat stock motors and on muddy tracks. Nobody believes in muddy tracks anymore. Nobody has anything close to stock. I mean, it's not the sport that was unsafe then.
And we haven't progressed at all. You mentioned that, like, if you were to take the impact and the hits and the force and all that stuff and compare it from the 90s where cars were giving, pretty easy to now. Chad, you took a hit last year in the doors that it was one of the hardest hits I've ever seen. I mean,
yeah.
I know, Blizzard Bash and some of these big shows have progressed with that, but overall, we really haven't progressed with the intensity, the horsepower that we have, the gears, all that stuff didn't even exist when we weren't even putting 4-point cages in these cars.
Exactly. Yeah, and then the disrespect for door hits at the upper level is trickling down to the county fairs, and I've made more door calls this year than I have in the previous 5 just because we got to get back control of it.
So you do make door calls at your show?
Yes. Yep. The county level cars are not safe enough for door hits like that.
So I agree with you 100% at the county fair level. We actually have implemented that mandatory door plates for all classes, our front wheel drive class, and then a mandatory rollover bar. We're the only promoter in Ohio that has mandatory. Now we face kickback. There's plenty of people that you complain about it or they go from my show to somebody else's show and they have to cut their door plate off and roll over. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense why we're doing those things.
Yeah, I mean, usually if it's a safety issue at my show, a door plate or something on the driver's side only, I don't throw a stink about it, whether it's in the rules or not. How's it going to take anybody out? You're not supposed to get hit there. So I can take the butt chewings from the other drivers, or they can say wish next time they'll bring a door plate with them or whatever. So
Yeah, for sure. Um, I want to get into this. We got some comments coming in, and I'll get to them here a little bit later. Just want to get through a couple talking points here. Um, Timeline of Derby history. Where do you think that we are at? So, are we still climbing the mountain? Are we climaxed? Are we going down? Where are we at in the Derby history, or the progression of Demolition Derby?
I hope we haven't reached the peak, but I don't think we're going to duplicate the early mayhem days, the dent days. It's tough to duplicate that because the old guard, as we've talked, we didn't know each other then. That's how we got to know each other, and once we clicked with certain people, it was tough on other people, but nobody knew that we really knew each other. And I don't think we have the competitive spirit that we had in the mid 2000s. People knowing that they're going to dent, there's no second chance. You have to win a heat to get to the feature, and you're traveling 12 hours, and and then pick up with everything in your shop in the back of it, just to Derby against the best people in the nation at that time. Just not even caring if you win a heat, basically going to see where you stacked up with the rest of the nation. I don't think the younger generation is willing to take that chance, and I might be wrong, but I just don't see it. And it might be because it's costing them too much and they can't afford it. If we have some throwback stuff where they don't feel like they have to have all that money in them and everything, it might help. But I'm just not. I just hope we haven't. I think the only thing that can save us and get us still climbing the mountain is a huge corporate type sponsor and some sort of national circuit. But as far as just a good old fashioned, where I came from, make friends like you'll never forget through them years, I don't think we'll ever get back there.
You mentioned the competition aspect of that, and that kind of stood out to me. How did we lose that? I have never shied away from competition.
I haven't. I'm still here. I'm ready. That's why I'm coming to Ohio.
Yeah, I know you haven't. I mean, I made a phone call to you, and we can kind of talk about the Ohio stuff a little bit. We'll have some bigger announcements, coming with Chad coming to Ohio. But Chad is, I don't want to say stepping out of the box because you've never really shied away from competition. But you're somebody from outside of the surrounding states of Ohio. We've got some Illinois guys, we got some Iowa guys, some Wisconsin guys, but coming all the way from Kansas, you're kind of putting your money where your mouth is again and saying, look, I am about the competition.
Yeah, and I know plenty of Ohio drivers. Some of the best drivers I've know come from Ohio, and the best belters. I mean, I know where we're going and what we're getting into, but I'm not coming up there thinking I'm going to win a show. Whenever you go somewhere and you think you're going to win a show, you might as well turn around and go home, because there's no such thing as an easy derby. When you decide there's an easy derby, hang it up and talk about it like everybody does on the keyboards, and don't go out and prove it anymore, because obviously you're better than anybody, and you're in the wrong sport. You need to move on. So, yeah, it's just, I don't know. I mean,
well, I'm excited to have you coming up here and showing these guys that that you are willing to travel. You're willing to go outside of the state. You're willing to go into enemy territory. Now, obviously, we run a format, so you're not coming to run against 20 different people that are friends, right?
Right. The format, what really intrigues me, because I know how it all works. I mean, otherwise, at a regular derby. So the format definitely helps.
Yeah, I mean, you're coming here, you have to beat two people, and you're going to be in the feature with around 15 to 18, depending on how many cars actually show up. Pretty realistic, thought process. You do have a chance. You can beat two people.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't go thinking you're going to beat them. You're going to go out there and try and drive. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has a bad day. So, but in reality, it's a new format for me. I've derbied in Ohio before. I came to Lima when Dent was there after they moved from Indianapolis. So, um, you know, it's just the format's what I like. I mean, the big money on top. I mean, if you get lucky, make the feature and get down in the top, that never hurts anything. Um, so it'll be great. I mean, I don't know a lot of the Ohio guys right now that are running, but I'm sure we'll all figure it out.
Well, there is, I mean, obviously there's Ohio guys in here, but I'm telling you, Kentucky, PA, Indiana, Wisconsin, Iowa,
Yeah,
Illinois are all represented pretty heavily. I mean, it's the King of Ohio, and we sort of branded that, but this particular class is called the King, you know, um, for a reason. We want to pull the biggest names in the sport, to come and compete on the highest level for a lot of money. I mean, the last couple years we've paid out 25,000 and then 26,500. This year it has the potential, which I really think that it's going to fill. We're getting pretty close to filling, so that means it'll pay 50,000. So 50,000. I mean, that would be 3 straight years of the highest person in the country for an individual first place prize. It's a lot of money.
absolutely. Yeah, and the money is not the most important. I think some of the best drivers and builders in the nation is going to be there, and that's probably more why I want to come, I guess.
Well, I appreciate you taking the opportunity and coming to Ohio, and putting it on the line for us all to see. We want to see it as much as anyone. I know these dream matchups of guys running against each other. I've always dreamed, oh, what about this guy? Everyone's always had their hypotheticals.
Yeah.
Well, we'll lay that out of what the hypotheticals will be with Chad coming up. We won't get into that tonight, but there's going to be some excitement, that you're bringing to the table.
Well, I hope it's exciting as we're making it out to be.
No, it's going to be really big. It's going to be really big. I'm sure it's going to be nerve wracking that weekend. Just everything. You haven't been through the draws and all that stuff, but you're always nervous. So do you still get nervous for derbies?
Oh yeah, if you're not a little bit, then you probably ought to hang it up also. So I mean, that's why we go. I mean, it's the excitement, the highs and the lows of it.
It is the highs and the lows. I ran a couple big shows this year, and I mean, every time I'm like, I don't even want to get in this car. I can't believe we do this. I don't know why we do this. And then that first hit, everything is at peace.
Yeah.
And you're good to go. A couple other topics I want to get into. From a driver's perspective, we talked about the timeline and history of Demolition Derby. From a driver's perspective, what needs to happen to further our sport from the driver's perspective?
Boy, I don't know. I mean, we're into indoor shows now, which I mean are selling out, which is good. We're on to live feeds, live stream. People can stay home and watch you that normally couldn't travel 6 hours away or 2 states away. I other than some rules and stuff to get everybody more across the nation on the same pages, I don't know of anything that can really help.
I got something for you. How can we? I want you guys to be like the NFL quarterbacks of our demolition derby, meaning I want you guys to be like the superstars. How can we help formulate? Obviously, you've done some things to pay it forward in the sport, and put yourself out there. How can we get more of you guys to do that? You know, the bigger names in our sport to do those types of things, to accept t-shirts being made of them, to wear t-shirts proudly, to, you know, say hey to the little kid. How can we do that?
Well, I mean that's an interesting point because I mean some of that stuff could happen on the marketing part of it and everything, where it could pay dividends back to drivers that go to bigger shows or you know or on the track shots more or on you know Derby Nation more and stuff like that. I mean that could really pick up and change some things and help pay for your hobby along the way. I don't think there's an issue if somebody had the platform to do that. You see it in local dirt track racing in the World of Outlaws. You know, they bring their merchandise trailer and has basically everybody that drives under their umbrella that you can buy, you know, their shirt or whatnot. And I know they probably get some money back out of that and everything else. So it all helps. I mean, example, Blizzard Bash, we sell our Team Kansas shirts, and that goes into our fund to pay entries or door wraps or you know whatever we need for the weekend, and it's the way for our fans to be involved and for us to give back to our team and help support our endeavors.
The branding part of that is huge. Team Kansas is, anyone that watches Blizzard Bash or has been really around Demolition Derby, they know Team Kansas, and they pretty much know you, Chad Markley, as, you know, the face of Team Kansas. Obviously, you've had Jimmy there for a long time too, but you know that the marketing and the branding of this is big, and I hope we can foster a environment where we can get more out of that, or more out of our drivers, because look, we're here to sell entertainment. If more people know who Chad Markley is, more people are coming to Ohio next year. You know.
Well, and maybe so, maybe not. I mean, I don't know that my name carries that much weight, but I mean, as
You
I've
move the
told,
needle, my friend. You move the needle.
um, as I've discussed with like Tim Clark before, I said we need to at Blizzard we need to have a time period where, as much as I don't want to go down there and sign autographs and do that kind of stuff because I don't, I, I see the need for it as a promoter and everything. We need to have that set up on the floor of the arena and let them kids come down there and talk and just shake hands and say wow and you know give them a checkered flag to sign or something like that. I mean, those little things that bring your crowd back because uh, when you walk through places like that, you realize that everything you do, people's watching you right there. So it's important to the sport to keep the, I guess I want to say, good sportsmanship, good crowd sportsmanship, and all that going, so we can keep family atmosphere there and keep people coming.
It's almost like it's a time period in your life. So I have two young boys now, like 3 and a little over 1, and this means more than it ever has. I wouldn't have understood what you were saying or what we're talking about with signing autographs and what that means 5 years ago, because I didn't have any kids. But once you go through that and you understand, like, my boy would love to go out there and do that.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we're providing those opportunities. You know,
Yeah, and it won't cost anybody anything. So I mean, it's just one of them little things that we can throw back and do um, at that next level.
yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking of ideas. You mentioned checkered flags. Imagine if you sold a checkered flag for $10, and that was what every kid
Now
went.
you're being a greedy promoter. You could have started at 5. You know, $5.
Whatever the cost is, whatever the cost is, sell them at cost, and then they
Yeah,
take them and they bring them to all you drivers to sign, and then all of a
yeah,
sudden, this was 2024 King of Ohio. I got all the drivers to sign my. That'd be pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Heck, Might have stumbled upon something there.
Yeah,
You ready? You got your
I'm
hand ready for some autographs?
I'm full of something. I don't know if it's good ideas or not, but
um, what does Chad Markley have left to accomplish in the Derby world? You've accomplished a lot, man, and you are, in many eyes, on the Mount Rushmore of demolition Derby drivers. What do you have left to accomplish?
I'm not. I guess I'm not trying to accomplish anything, but the next win. I mean, whatever show it might be, that's the next accomplishment. I don't have any bigger goal than the next show. I don't look that far forward. It's getting towards the end of the deal, so I'm going to take advantage of my situation at this point in time and have fun.
Is that what keeps you kind of in the moment, that you're just not ever going to look too far ahead, and that's how you stay on top of your game?
Yeah, I'm not going to be the guy that puts a time limit on when I'm done or whenever. It's just one day I'll wake up and say I'm done.
Nice. A couple other things. I sent out some questions, or I sent out a post earlier today. Some people wanted to know some things about Chad Markley, and where did you start? Who was your influences? Your first car, and then your number. Where did that come from?
Well, I started out with a. We'll just go backwards from there. But I started out with a different number. I started out with 18 because my birthday was the 18th, and then I wound up with 36 from my high school football career. So I just kind of stuck that on there and ran with that. So I had pretty good luck and success at that. So I figured it would carry on. And unfortunately, no disrespect to Chrysler guys, but my first three cars were Chryslers, and they taught me to drive forward more than backwards. And then my fourth car was a Chevy wagon, so I figured it was time to go backwards.
We talked about it a little bit before we got on air here about the Chrysler deal. Chryslers, we hear from like my generation, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but my generation, I guess, this Chrysler deal was not a thing. Imperials were banned, and everyone kind of figured out like the 70s, Chryslers that you're talking about there weren't a thing. So out east, they say this stuff all the time. I mean, they lose their mind over these 70s Chryslers. And
Yeah.
I never even knew that there was a day and age where that was a thing.
They dominated, at least here in Kansas, when the Imperials probably around 80 got banned everywhere out here, around 80, 85 probably, which I was only 5 or 6. But then the square body New Yorkers 65 sixes came on strong, and then they were dominating. They were just everybody was still driving backwards, and those cars had the best back end on them at that time. You didn't dare use your front bumper because you couldn't change bumpers or nothing. And then the shockers came on right about the time the Chevys were getting involved around here. But the shocker was a front end car because they had a good solid the shock bumpers on them, and that changed the whole game of the Derby. I mean the safety what people don't realize the safety aspect from the federal government has changed the timetable and the way derbies are ran since the beginning of demolition derby, and now we can look clear into the 2010 VIX and stuff with all the extra gussets because the gas tanks blowing up and stuff, and once again the federal government changed our sport for us. So you looked at that timeline and you'll follow the trends in demolition derby.
Yeah, it's pretty neat to talk about that. Just that you guys grew up that. My first car was a 75 sedan, so a 75 Bel Air.
Yeah.
So I just grew up in that different era. The Chevys were dominant, in that era, and then transitioned to Fords, obviously. There's somebody out there, obviously a little bit younger than me, that probably has never been in anything but a Ford.
Oh, I'm sure of that. Yeah. It's pretty tough to find a lot of people that's ran any old iron right now.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any idea what you're taking to the King?
Maybe.
Okay, you got an idea? Just this,
I,
we're not asking. I just wondering if you had an idea.
I've got a pretty good idea.
Okay. There was a question that came by. Your earliest memory. What is
It,
your earliest memory?
well, that'll depend on what you let me do with some leaf springs. We'll have to talk about rules that on a off-camera basis.
Okay, we can do that. Earliest memory. What's your earliest Derby memory?
Uh, Sitting in the stands, looking in the pits, being disappointed that I couldn't be back there at about 10 years old or maybe younger, because back then you could not get in the pits no matter what. It was like Fort Knox.
So you were sitting up in the stands. Did you have some buddies growing up? Did the family Derby?
Oh
How did?
no, it's a family deal. I'm the youngest of 10, and I believe at least 7 or 8 of them all participated. This is the 50th year for our hometown show in Abilene, Kansas, and there's been a Markley in every single one of them.
50th year,
50th year. Yep,
and that's Demolition Derby.
that's Demolition Derby.
Wow. And there's been how many times have you, as a Markley, won in 50 years?
I don't know, quite a few.
I would say a lot. Do you know, or are you just being humble?
Uh, so it's a 2-night show and has been traditionally for a lot of years. I probably have 13 or 14 wins myself, and brothers probably have another 10 combined.
I figured you had some type of idea. So 30-ish wins out of the 50 years. That's pretty impressive.
Probably, but that's double. That's a double show, so you know.
Oh, for sure. Well, I'm sure you guys have a target on your back, right? Anytime you go there, there's locals that want to beat you.
Yep. Yep. There's people that don't talk to us during fair week, but we're buddies after that.
That's awesome. And the fair is what sparked Demolition Derby. It's an awesome thing. Hey, your front bumper. We talked about rules. What the heck is your front bumper?
It's a factory skin according to the rules, and it is not molded in any shape or form like some of the Chrysler replica pointies.
What is it a factory skin of?
Well, of a car.
Okay, of a car. I got that question. Somebody wanted me to ask that, and I've heard that a lot. I've seen your bumper. It is the pointy stopper, I guess we'll call it.
We hope so.
Yeah. Is that? I mean, you set your car up a little bit different. I don't want to give away anything, and nothing that people can't see in pictures, but
yeah, I prefer to hit wheels, not radiators, and because you can still win without a radiator, you can't win without wheels.
Do you like the progression of our sport going from hitting wheels and being punished for hitting guys nose to nose to the skip game with these pointies?
I don't care for the progression of the mod cars in general. Rather, it's the skip pointies or the me having to build my bumper to combat against them, or aftermarket spindles. I mean, it was fine for a few years, but it's you can start seeing that it's pushing more drivers away than it's gaining now.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation going down that road of where's the line of progression, because I mean we're in a sport much like any motorsport, right, where you guys are constantly pushing the issue. Where do you draw the line? Where do you go back? Does it always progress and then come back 10 steps and then progress and then come back? Or
we're just having that very discussion about my rules for some of my classes at my shows. Basically, you're changing the name of a class, and that puts 10 more people back in the class. I mean, it really makes no sense.
We did a throwback class, and we added that to our King of Ohio schedule, and it's pulling some names out of the weeds that haven't ran in quite a long time, and
yeah.
Just the name throwback class is appealing because, I mean, when you get looking at the rules, of 20 years ago. Well,
Well,
15 years ago, 13 to 15 years ago, whatever it is. Some of the stuff that we use today still existed. It was just the terminology was different. How far you guys have pushed the envelope has
well,
definitely.
the terminology of gray area used to be cheating, so that's where it all went bad.
That that's a great point because back in the day that was not a thing. Gray area was cheating and you were loaded.
Yeah,
Now it's become more of a builder's game for sure, playing and dabbling in those rules. There's no doubt about that. I got to deal with it as much as anyone at a show like we're putting on.
yeah, I'm sure.
Here's a question here. Cal says, where does the evolution stop? Derby drivers are by far the best engineers, and it's fun to see what people try and do to adapt to fix their cars. Well, I don't know. I mean, if we saw the future, I guess we'd be
Well,
there.
I mean, let's just look backwards. I mean, we've went from the run what you brung cars that people were excited about for 2 or 3 years, and then we renamed it a mod and put more rules in place, and then they were excited about that for another 4 or 5 years, and now we got to back up. I mean, being creative, and I don't know, I don't mind the creativity. I mean, I've adapted to it, I guess you should say. And I guess if we're going to go back to that, I mean, being creative was notching wagons at Mayhem, cutting the frames on wagons, and people walking by looking at me like I was crazy, or my friends that knew what I was doing just shake their head and like, is that really going to work? I'm like, well, just watch and see. And then the next thing you know, they might be sharing that info, or wanting to use that info, and just I guess that was creativity back in the day, is how you fold your car, how you cut your car, how you do whatever, that just now we do it with parts and welding different things in different areas that is gray area.
On that note, I had a conversation with Mike Decker today about tilting a car, and around our area, he's widely considered the first one to tilt, and he said it was an accidental thing. Do you have any idea of who was the first out in your neck of the woods to tilt, to crease a car? Like, do you have any idea where these things came from?
I don't know. I mean, out in our area where we went, and where I was mainly one of the only ones going out of state, and then my nephew Shane going with me and stuff, we'd see some of that stuff at Dent back then and stuff. So I'm assuming like the tilt and stuff we kind of brought back with us. But the creasing and stuff, I don't know. I mean, it just kind of caught on. I mean, it used to be beat the sides in and crease a trunk lid and do some little things, and then it got more popular and more defined after that.
Yeah, I've always wanted to chase down exactly where those things came from. I know, like in our area, I think Toby gets credited for like a gas tank protector, and I think that's pretty widely accepted. Decker with the tilting, but I know they're just area things. Like I know that probably somebody out in Kansas, somebody out in Nebraska, somebody in Maryland, whatever it is, somebody came up with these things on their own. I know there's certain guys that always get credit for it, but it would be real interesting to track down like where this started.
Yeah, I think it'd almost be impossible, because it probably happened the same year somewhere, just in a different, little bit different form, or different, different way. And then, the cold tilt, I'd imagine the tilting probably happened after a derby, and they cold tilted it and then had to cut it and tilt it or whatever, so.
Decker, I don't want to, I'll have Decker on here at some point, but the story Decker told me today was they had a car, they ran it, it was junk. And I don't want to elaborate too much on the story. He tells a much better story of the moment, but it was junk. He went to pull it down. It wasn't coming down, and he just cut the flaps on a Ford, and all of a sudden the front end fell down.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, what am I going to do here? And then even at that point, he was like, I didn't really know what we did. We ran a couple cars, or we ran that car a couple times. It was harder, holding up better than anywhere else. And then they started thinking like, what is, we didn't really do anything to
What
this
happened?
car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
What happened? What changed? And that's the story that he told me today. It was a real interesting conversation.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, and I think that's how most of it happened. I mean, uh, the car got bent, and you're laying there looking at it like, what can I do next time, or can I save this car this time? And most of these people have to remember we didn't get repair plates. I mean, there was no such thing as repair plates back, 15 years ago. It was fix the car or throw it away.
Yeah. On that note, you've ran some cars with wagons that you've cut off and been real surgical with out in your neck of the woods, that Blizzard Bash capital city stuff. That really rubs people the wrong way when you do something like that. But you've been as surgical with anyone with wagon. You've cut off a wagon, right? Am I not
I've
recalling?
never started with a cutoff wagon, and I don't believe that you should be able to move the bumper.
So, but you've cut one off after the show, like during the show.
Yeah, okay. During the show where it's basically ripped loose or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then burn it down.
I could have swore I remember you just absolutely picking a field apart. Maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago at Blizzard Bash, and you were just smoking wheels. I mean, it was incredible to watch.
Yeah. So, I mean, I basically for the mod, I'll build them all to do that eventually. At what point in time we put it down, it depends on the heat we draw or the next round.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me go back through some of these questions. If anyone has any questions, they can chime in. And then we'll wrap this thing up for tonight. See if we got any good ones in here. Breyer says that you would definitely take those lug nuts. You must have taken his.
Probably so.
That's a little bit of that Ohio blood out there. Look, we'll hang on here for just a minute or two, but I just wanted to say thanks again for coming on. Not only this, but what you're doing for the sport going forward, coming to the King, and what all that entails. It's really cool. I'm a huge fan. Obviously, I'm a promoter and a driver myself, but more importantly, I'm a fan of you guys and all you icons of the sport that we grew up watching, grew up still watching, right? I mean, you guys haven't gone anywhere yet. You're still winning, and I think this is really cool. Not only for me, but the next generation to see you guys compete, and then obviously get to compete against you. There's going to be some young guys that are going to get to run against Chad Markley that are going to tell these stories for a long, long time.
I don't know if that's because I'm getting old, or is that because their competition's getting younger, but I think it's a combination of both. And on that same note, at Blizzard, we had a lot of young talent out there. I mean, the last car running there for the Iowans, he was I think he's 18, 19 years old. That was great to see. The kids we ran in the first heat, they're young. I mean, pretty much, besides a few of us, most all of our competitors are younger than us now. So that's good. I mean, that means they're putting their time and learning, and they're getting involved, and they're going to be there. I mean, all it takes is that seat time, no matter if it's in a stock car, a mod car, whatever. People underestimate the fun of just building something stock and going out and having fun with it, how much you'll learn in that car over something that's not supposed to bend or not supposed to do this or that. So they need to really reevaluate that. Just go have fun in something stock.
And it is fun to go back to the stock stuff. It really is.
Yeah.
You kind of you have some uncontrollables there with stock, but it's fun to.
Yeah, but you can the same guys will fix that little bit of stuff and last. The cars will last a lot longer than the non-mechanical guys that aren't going to make it in the other classes anyway. So it's the stock deal's so fun that we make a trip to Wisconsin to a friend of ours, salvage yard, and we just draw keys out of a hat on New Year's Day and run a derby just with totally bone stock cars. So
here's a comment for you. What was your most favorite derby to drive in? On that note,
I truthfully, I don't really know that I have a favorite. I mean, everyone's almost as important as the next. I mean, I guess probably the tougher the challenge, the more it's towards the top.
Okay. A couple other things here. What impression do you want to make on the sport? So when Chad Markley's gone and he retires from the sport, what do you want people to see or remember Chad for?
Hopefully never being a poor sport, sportsmanship, maybe not being the guy that pushes the gray area, but still could compete with the guys that just love the gray area.
That's a fair answer. And then here, the last thing here, your socials, we talked about social media just a little bit. Do you have some social media stuff you want to share here? People can follow you on?
Well, I personally am not on. I mean, I don't have a TikTok or any of that because I would never get anything else done. We do a Midwest Championship CDDA Facebook. We do lives periodically to answer questions and go over derbies that we just produced or put on. So, if they want to join us on Midwest Championship on Facebook, that'd be great. We got about 5,200 followers now, and more the better, and try to make things better for at least our portion of this derby world.
And I know you guys got a Team Kansas page too that you update, or somebody updates pretty frequently.
Somebody does. I don't even really know if my wife's in control of that or Scotty's in control of that or who's in control of that. And Chicken might be. He's more an internet guy. He's young enough. He's more of an internet guy than me. So I'm just the pretty face.
Well, you're quite a talented driver too, man. And thank you for carrying the torch into the next generation. Thank you for everything that you do. And I appreciate your time. We'll wrap it up tonight. And I'm sure we'll have you back on here over the next couple months to talk about your journey to the King, and we'll hype that up a little bit.
Well, I'll be calling you about I don't know if you want to call Ohio gray area or black area rules, but I'm sure there's some hidden stuff in there I'm going to have to ask.
I'm just a phone call away. Just call me.
All right.
All right, man. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you.